Let's talk about spleen 3, supreme white, a source Yuan point. Location on the medial aspect of the foot, in the depression proximal to the head of the first metatarsal bone at the border of the red and white skin. When palpating along the border of the red and white skin on the medial aspect of the foot from distal, that means the toes, to proximal, the ankle, the metatarsophalangeal joint forms a prominent landmark. Spleen 3 is located just proximal to this joint in a clearly palpable depression, which marks the junction of the head and the shaft of the first metatarsal bone. Located in a comparable position is bladder 65, which is proximal to the head of the fifth metatarsal bone on the lateral border of the foot. In comparable locations on the borders of the hand are Li3 on the radial aspect and Si3 on the ulnar aspect of the hand. Needling of spleen 3, 0.5 to 1 soon vertically or obliquely from medial towards lateral. Caution, needling this point tends to be painful. Actions, indications. Spleen 3 tonifies the spleen, harmonizes the lower burner, eliminates dampness and damp heat, regulates qi locally. Special features, Yuan-Source point, Shu-Stream point, earth point, pen point, according to the 5 phases. Important point for tonifying the spleen. Spleen 3 is a major point to tonify the spleen, as it is the source point of the channel and also earth point of an earth channel, as spleen belongs to earth, which is at the center of the 5 elements. The source point of the spleen is the center of the center. It is very frequently used to tonify the spleen in any of its deficiency patterns. Spleen 3 stimulates the mental faculties pertaining to the intellect, the E, which are associated with the spleen, and it can be used in cases when spleen qi has been weakened by excessive mental work. The use of spleen 3 can then stimulate the brain, promote memory, and induce mental clarity. This point is useful to stimulate mental powers in patients suffering from post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. Another important function of spleen 3 is to resolve dampness, for which it is a major point. It is used in any dampness pattern in the upper, middle, or lower burner. When used to resolve dampness, it should be needled with reducing method. Examples of symptoms and signs of dampness are confused thinking, feeling of heaviness and mozziness, or fuzziness of the head, feeling of fullness of the epigastrium, no appetite, feeling of heaviness of the body, and sticky tongue coating. Spleen 3 is particularly useful to resolve dampness from the head, where it causes a feeling of heaviness and mozziness of the head and a dull frontal headache. Spleen 3 is also frequently used in chronic retention of phlegm in the lungs. Phlegm is retained in the lungs, but it originates from the spleen due to impairment of its function of transportation and transformation. Reinforcing spleen 3 can at the same time tonify the spleen to strengthen the lungs, strengthening the earth to nourish metal and resolve phlegm. A more unusual use of spleen 3 is to strengthen the spine. According to chapter 4 of the Simple Questions, the spleen controls the spine. Spleen 3 is a very useful point to strengthen and straighten the spine in cases of chronic backache. Summary of functions. Spleen 3 is a major point to tonify spleen, stimulates the intellect and mental faculties, regulates the intestines, as in abdominal distension and pain, diarrhea, resolves dampness, particularly from the head, resolves phlegm and strengthens the lungs, strengthens the spinal muscles.